creating your stereotypes in the life, and whether one really empowers to dissect those stereotypes, or for that matter, to to get out of those stereotypes, and whether your education really empowers you to do so or not. That becomes a fundamental question today. Like, irrespective of your degree, somehow you have not been able to shun your stereotypes. And just one small example I give you, you know, the ways in which women is treated, where you have the idea of Devi, the very divine being and the very sacred one. But at the same time, the same women body is desecrated all the time. The same women body is looked at as a desirous body. The same women is treated as secondary citizen in the society, or the secondary human being in the society. Now, one of the interesting thing which we have created over a period of time, that there is one popular saying, वो करे तो रास लीला, हम करे तो character ढीला. This is a very popular saying in the northern India. So, so what you eulogize is that what the divine being does, or for that matter, what your belief in a certain persona does, so that you don't really question the very persona in which you are believing in, whether he is moral or immoral. And then the male in the society really wants to emulate that, and therefore this whole culture of like wo kare to ras leela, hum kare to character leela comes up. So there is this whole process of legitimization that goes into the making of this kind of a belief system, and the divine and sacred becomes a defense mechanism in order to protect these kind of cultural practices. So it is more to do with your culture, it is more to do with your belief, it is more to do with your idea of sacred and divine. And therefore, you will notice that the eve teasing, the secondary treatment of the women, and right to have to use the women's body for the sexual purpose by the male becomes a very interesting kind of a stereotypes which goes into the making of the society. And as and when you try to oppose these stereotypes, you get a backlash in the society. So your stereotype is governed by the idea of your belief and sacred, and therefore, as and when you confront these stereotypes, you get a backlash in the society. This is how one has to see. So there are two important things. One is a cultural manifestation. Second is a legal provision. The legal provision comes as a part of the protection measure by the state, where the state completely failed its responsibility to protect the women of this nation. Completely failed. And then within that, you also have the hierarchy of the women, like the upper caste, the middle caste, the lower caste, this caste and that caste. So the institution of injustice, because caste is hierarchy. Caste is like what Dr. Ambedkar defines caste as, not only division of labor but also division of laborers. So it's an institution of hierarchy, it's an institution of injustice. And that institution of injustice will always create slavery, and therefore the exploitation. Therefore, the exploitation and the exploitative means become part of your religious, sacred, and divine, and henceforth you have no right to raise your voice against this kind of a slavery, the slavery structure. and consequently you you went on practicing this kind of behavior, and that is how the stereotypes gets established. This is just one example, this is just one distance. Then the second example I would like to give is that the like how you create personas. You see, the stereotypes of the personas. The moment, say for example, when it comes to many national leaders, so-called national leaders, I mean, you have to accept them as a national leader. But do we really try to dissect how can we consider them as a national leader, and should we consider them as a national leader? Now, this whole bogey of nationalism, this whole idea of being national becomes a very decisive instrument and a stereotype where you completely block your thinking, your consciousness as to whom we consider as real national, whom we consider as the personas to be emulated, or we remain in a perennial protected ignorance. So the stereotyping is very important to understand as to how we ourselves are part of the stereotypings and how we live in this kind of stereotypes. Just give I will illustrate one small example. You know, the whole, say for example, in the Indian history of Indian Parliament, you know, there is one incident which one has to take a note. And what is that one important incident in the history of the Indian Parliament? I think the biggest event which needed to be noted in the history of the Parliament is Hindu Code Bill. The Hindu Code Bill was introduced by Dr. Ambedkar, and only 6 members of Parliament stood for the Hindu Code Bill, and the rest of the parliamentarians, the rest of the member of parliaments completely opposed to the Hindu Code Bill. Just imagine, just imagine. So the whole idea of national, suddenly you need to understand as to what is the idea of national, and then how do we are subscribing to this national. Now the people who were against the Hindu Code Bill, today they are being eulogized. If you see consistently, whether it is this government or that government, I'm not concerned about which party rules in this country, but you need to understand that how your political sphere gets completely stereotyped by this idea of national leader. So anybody who is projected as national leader, and the people who have worked for the welfare of the women, the welfare of the people, the welfare of the masses, are not are deemed as sectarian, as deemed as caste leaders, as deemed as regional leaders, and not the national. This is another stereotype. So the stereotypes are so enormous that it does not empower you to interrogate the very process of making, and also the intentional aspect of making these stereotypes, and how these stereotypes are completely, you are so much ingrained, completely drenched in these kind of stereotypes that you cannot think otherwise. How many people, whether it is sociologists, whether it is political scientists, whether it is cultural historians, whether it is historians, have really gone into this kind of a problem? They investigate that why these only 6 members of parliament stood for the Hindu Code Bill, and the rest of the parliament completely, rest of the members of the parliament completely opposed to this Hindu Code Bill, and that includes people like Sardar Patel, the entire Nehru cabinet, and the so many people, number of people. Just imagine. And today they are eulogized. We call them as national. We call them as the modern nation builders. Where are these nation builders when it comes to the rights of the women? That means women is considered as a secondary, as a commodity. Women is considered as a secondary citizen. Women is treated as a slave. And when Dr. Ambedkar wanted to give equal rights and equality to the women, these so-called other members of the parliament, barring these 6 members, they went against it, including likes of Sarojini Naidu. So one has to understand whether what is national. So the national becomes another stereotype. And one more important factor which I would like to add is that the very bogey of, or the nomenclature of national, gets constantly reimposed and imprinted in the public sphere, that the name of the streets, the name of the institutions, the name of the buildings, the name of the trains, these are all the public. These are all the these are all very common things in the public sphere. And in the public sphere, you give these names on those people who were against the Hindu Code Bill, who were anti-women. These anti-women leaders or the members of the parliament, they become part of the nationalistic narrative. They become part of this whole bogey of nationalism. They become part of the narrative of the modernity. Is that the modernity we are living in? Is that the modernity we really wanted? So you need to understand, like, then there is another stereotype, the stereotype of modern, being modern. And then there is another stereotype simultaneously which goes with this whole idea of modern, that is urban and rural. So the urban bahu in the Bollywood movie is a villain. The rural bahu is a bichari. So the bahu becomes either villain or a bichari, but not a very empowering kind of a persona who really stands for the equality. So the narratives are woven in such a way that it nurtures your stereotypes rather than dismantling stereotypes. This is very, very clear. Then comes the modern. So the urban modern bahu is not interested to look after the mothers and the fathers, not interested in the family, whereas the bichari bahu has no option but to get into this kind of services. That is that. So these are the kind of a binaries which you find in the stereotypings. Now you see the functioning of the society, how the society is functioning. The responsibility of caring parents, whether it is male's parent or female's parent, lies with everyone. And everyone has to carry that responsibility. The modern does not mean that you are dismantling the family. Nowhere in the world, the modernity really meant destruction of the family values. The family values is another stereotype. What is that family values in India? The family values in India is that of Jati Dharma. And what is that Jati Dharma? That Jati Dharma is a sacred. And that sacred comes from your divine being. And therefore, you have no right to change. You have to follow it. So this is how the Indian mindset is governed by so many stereotypes. This is how the education does not really help to break these kind of stereotypes. The women is not safe on the street. Why it is not safe on the street? The the culture, the Indian culture is that of what I called as विटंबनावादी संस्कृति. वो विटंबित करती है, वो डिफेम करती है, वो आपको जलील करती है. तो ये जो विटंबनावादी संस्कृति है, जब as long as we remain in this culture of defamation, as long as we follow the norms of these cultural practices, we will not be able to break those stereotypes. None of the sociologists in this country and the psychologists in this country has really tried to analyze this kind of a phenomenon. Or even for that matter, likes of Ashish Nandi, when he talks about the violence and analyze the violence, all these people have taken, they went under the refuge of Freudian idea of subconscious. Is violence a product of subconscious? Is rape product of subconscious? Is defaming anyone is a product of subconscious? The answer is no. These are the conscious manifestation. The woman's body is constantly getting tormented. Is it a subconscious? The answer is no. It is not subconscious. It is very much a conscious act. But irrespective of that, you go under the idea of Freudian subconsciousness and try to understand, try to analyze this phenomenon. Second thing is that the violence also has caste markers. Just imagine the nature of sensitivity people have. As and when somebody who is who is raped and all those things, the kind of a character assassination that goes in the public sphere, I repeat, the kind of a character assassination that goes in the public sphere and the ways in which that character assassination presented in the court of law, and then furthermore, as and when there is the victim comes from the scheduled caste or the scheduled tribe community, the nature of perception among the caste Hindus, among the non-scheduled caste and the non-scheduled tribe communities become, it differs, whether it is male or anybody, whether it is male or female, it differs. Why it differs? Why a woman also cannot think as a fellow woman and share the burden of the pain and the sufferings and strive to ward off the sufferings. Why it does not come? That is because of the stereotyping of others. This othering is also part of your stereotyping. And the psychosociologist, the psychoanalyst, they don't absolutely address this particular question. That means Are they really intellectual? If really we want to say that these are the intellectual of this country, then one has to question what is intellectual. You know, long ago, Dr. Ambedkar defined the difference between the intellectual class and the educated class. It says the intellectual class are the one who are open to ideas, willing to change. Open to ideas, willing to change. Why willing to change and open to ideas? Because they are free from the prejudices, because they are free from the stereotypes. The educated class are the one who are self-centric. Now you have to decide whether these claim intellectuals of this country, are they real intellectuals or a mere educated class who are extremely self-centric and who wish to impose their hegemony on the society and the knowledge production process in the academia and in the public sphere. To me, they are the one who are protecting stereotypes. To me, they are the epitome of intellectual disgust. They are fantastic example of intellectual disgust. Whether it is your teacher, whether it is your friend, whether it is your mother, whether it is your father, be it is anyone. They are the one who are making this nation perennially slave. Your reaction to the slavery, your reaction to the oppression, your reaction to the violence is not from the rational humanitarian perspective, but rather from your caste positions and from your caste hierarchies. Caste is an institution of injustices, and this institution of injustices has nurtured so many stereotypes that you cannot come, because you consider it as the following of those things as part of your belief and sacred. It's very simple. Like you go to the marriage ceremonies and then you will notice, oh no, हमारे यहाँ तो ऐसा होता है, हमारे यहाँ तो वैसा होता है, all kinds of things. That shows. And many of those ritual practices, absolutely meaningless. But even then you do. Why do you do irrespective of education? Why the women in India, the so-called educated and the degree holder women of this nation, why don't they write to the government that the Saptapadi should be removed as a part of solemnizing the marriage according to the Hindu Marriage Act? Everybody knows that Saptapadi, what it means, that the girl is attached to those gods and the father, the property of those gods and the father, and each phera means you are releasing from that slavery. That is the meaning of the Saptapadi in the marriage. And then finally the final phera goes with the husband. Now I am free from the slavery of all this God and the father, and now I have become your slave. Is there equality in that? But irrespective of these things, we don't raise a voice. We won't say that we will not follow this particular ritual. It is a responsibility of the people who know, who realize that this is bad, this is wrong, must raise their voice. Why the voice is not raised? Because you are constantly under the attack and under the burden of stereotypes. And these stereotypes are so much embedded in your belief, the idea of belief and sacred. There is number of such behavior. You go on the street and suddenly a billy comes, billy rasta kaat gayi, and then you make a round. This is another your stereotype, which is also has a element of belief and sacred. Poor cat absolutely has no relation with you. That poor cat comes and then you blame, categorize that poor cat, that poor animal as auspicious and inauspicious. These are all your belief systems. Certain signs and symbols have come in the tradition as a part of your ritualistic practices. But do your ritualistic practices have those kind of an element of empowerment or not? And if it is not a symbol of empowerment, then do you have a courage to reject it? Does your education empower you to think differently? Do you really become part and parcel of the creating equality, the fraternity, the liberty, and the justice? These are the larger questions. But to achieve that, your stereotypes become hindrance, no matter what preamble you write in the Constitution, no matter what laws you enact. The law of 498 cuts across the section of the Indian society. It is applicable. It is one of the means of achieving the common civil codes. Now, how many really understand and realize the power of that law and really get justice? Or for that matter, you initiate some kind of a demand for justice under that law. How many women really are empowered to do so? And then moreover, your dependency is on the male, and therefore you do not raise a voice against the male in the society, in the family. So this dependency culture is again because of your caste structure, and caste is an institution of slavery, caste is an institution of injustice, and therefore your behavior, your injustices become part and parcel of your stereotypes. They become part of your cultural practices. And these cultural practices, what I call as normative. So your stereotypes are so much embedded in your normative. You behave in certain manner, you think in certain manner, your belief system does not empower you to dissect your own behavior or to critically analyze your own self. Why there is no analysis of the own self? That is because there is ingrained idea of sacred within your own personal sphere, which is constantly bombarded right from your childhood, that you are this, you are that, you belong to this community, you belong to that community, and we are this and we are that. You will notice that the 20th century India, number of communities, the quest for the number of communities is to achieve Kshatriyatva, because they cannot claim Brahmins, because Brahmin becomes a very different kind of a category. And therefore, what you can achieve is that you can achieve Kshatriyatva. And in order to achieve Kshatriyatva, what do? You rape scheduled caste women, you rape scheduled tribe women, you kill scheduled caste person, you kill scheduled tribe person. These are the manifestations. And this is how your rules and principle comes. Because your principle is that of a hierarchy and claiming Kshatriyatva, therefore your rules are that of rape and murder. It is very simple. That means it shows how inhuman our Indian society is. And one has to understand who are the people who have raised voice against this inhuman behavior. You see, the girls, many girls in the Indian society or in the Indian educational system, They often like if you ask them uh, who is, I mean, you are getting education courtesy whom? Just hold on. Sorry, courtesy whom? And they will say no, 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 no. They will say something like Indira Gandhi, somebody kind like this and somebody like that and all kinds of. But the genesis of women empowerment, women education comes from Savitribai Phule, Mahatma Phule. How many really acknowledge that? And why that acknowledgement does not come? The acknowledgement does not come because your caste hierarchy does not empower you to acknowledge the personas who have been responsible in shaping your life, in shaping your country. None of the Babas, none of the Buas, none of the Maharaj, none of the Devis, they will talk about morality, equality, and women's education. Why the satsangs? Why these Babas and Buas do not raise voice against the violence on women and everyone? Why they cannot make a society a non-violent society? Because your Bhagavata, has a legitimacy of killing what, because what you are killing is a person and not the soul, and therefore you are absolved from the killing. So your nature of the belief system completely blocks your thinking, and when it comes to the mob psychology, whether it belongs to this community or that community, the mob psychology is a very different kind of uh, lot. And one instigation will fuel the violence. And how it fuels the violence? Because the consciousness of the people who have gathered there, they have gathered out of certain kind of a consciousness, and that consciousness is not that of a samyak. That consciousness is not that of the non-violence. That consciousness is not that of being human. And therefore, just one simple trigger results into a mob violence and lynching. And lynching. Lynching is not something which is happening now. Lynching has been happening in the villages of India. So, the rural India, which is projected as great India, as the most, भाई भारत की आत्मा तो भारत के ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में बसी है, or for that matter the ways in which Gandhi romanticizes village, the ways in which Bollywood romanticizes village. I mean, just imagine. I think around it is in the 70s or 80s. I don't know whether. I mean, there is this famous movie of Dharmendra. You know, Asha Parekh, Dharmendra, and they sing a song. कुछ कहता है ये सावन, अरे क्या कहता है, बड़ा अच्छा लगता है भाई सुनने में और देखने में. Is that a reality in the village? No, not at all. The rural sexuality operates at a different level. The urban sexuality operates at a different level. But that is projected as वाह हमारा देश कितना महान है, कि देखो युगल कैसे जा रहे हैं, हम कितने लिबरल है. द मोमेंट boys and girl are coming together and having conversation, suddenly, you know, the reaction is, अरे कुछ तो लफड़ा है. Why that word lafda comes in your language? Why it is so? That is precisely because your normative is that of seeing everything into the category of lafda. Or for that matter, you are so much entrenched in seeing any reaction, any interaction, not reaction, but any interaction between the two human beings as something which is immoral, and therefore it becomes a lafda. So this lafda becomes another stereotype. Now, why that becomes a stereotype? Precisely because you are segregated all the time, the ways in which boys are treated in the house and the ways in which girls are treated in the house. Completely different. My mother would make me and my brother to work in the house. Not necessary that only my sister would work. So we had a very complete different kind of an upbringing. And many of your parents who are working parents, they always ask, they teach their children to work in the home, to work in the house. They try to teach their children to face the realities of life. But at the same time, they also nurture certain stereotypes because the liberty that is available for the boys, the similar liberty is not accorded to the girls. Though the father would like his daughter to be liberal, to enjoy the liberty, liberty comes with responsibilities. The trouble in India is that the liberty leads to invite a violence, and therefore the father becomes so much worried, and every time he thinks the security of the daughter. How this security syndrome has come? This security syndrome has come because of the male stereotypings and the women stereotypings. And this male stereotypings and the women stereotypings have their genesis in the Jati Dharma. The Jati Dharma has the sanction of divine and sacred. So therefore, no matter what degree you get, whether it is PhD, DLED, anything for that matter, it does not empower you to change. This cultural practice, this culture of lafda, this culture of the national, this culture of subjugation, this culture of slavery, this culture of violence, this culture of abject surrender, this culture of abjectility, these are all part and parcel of your normative that are so much ingrained in your ideas of belief and sacred. If you go into the internal dynamics of understanding these kind of people, say, I'll give you another important example. You know, person like Lokmanya Tilak, he makes a derogatory statement against the Marathas, not the Marathas, but the Kundis, who are basically Maratha community now, against the Dhobi, against the Shimpi. Shimpi means the tailor. And he says, They are not worth to be in the assembly. They are there to follow laws and not to make laws. But even then, the Lokmanya becomes the national. And Phule becomes the caste icon. See the difference. How you are stereotyping. The Lokmanya becomes a national, irrespective of the fact that when he claims that स्वराज्य माझा जन्मसिद्ध अधिकार आहे आणि तो मी मिळवणारच, that the independence, self rule is my birthright. That is what he says. Mr. Tidak, the self rule is a birthright, that is true, but it is a birthright of the every citizen of this nation, not only yours. But your birthright is rooted in the idea of ruling the rest of the communities and not for the equality. Likes of Tagore, the so-called modern icon, another stereotype of the modern, will say that the real democracy is all about equality. But at the same time, he advocates Gandhi. Oh, no. If you give the similar kind of a weightage to those people who are at the lower ebb, they will show their fang and rule you. These are the ideas. And Mr. Tagore, during the time of this Pune Pact, when Gandhi was on Anshan, he traveled from Kolkata to Mumbai by a train and goes to Pune to support Gandhi. And when the associate of Gandhi asked Gandhiji, why do you so much oppose when you accept separate electorate for Muslims? Why do you oppose separate electorates for the scheduled caste, which has been demanded by Dr. Ambedkar? He says, these are the words of Gandhi. He says, the Muslims and this scheduled caste will come together and butcher the caste Hindus. So Gandhi we consider as an icon of secularism. This is another, I'm giving you the examples and you have to think. The third example of Gandhi. Gandhi talks about non-cooperation, that you should not cooperate with the British government, and advises the farmers to go for the non-cooperation. But Gandhi does not advocate the farmers not to be non-cooperative with your landlords. And he says, whatever lagan or the तुम्हारी जो भी प्रथा है जो जमींदार के साथ करनी है वो आप करो, लेकिन ब्रिटिश सरकार से नहीं करना. तो whose freedom you are talking about? Whose freedom you are talking about then? What is this freedom struggle then? I will give you another example. Gandhi was caught sleeping naked with the young girls, and that too by his secretary Bose. And then this whole idea of that comes as something like brahmacharya, tapacharya, something, that kind of a things, he started making a defense. As feminists in India really teach these kind of events in the academic syllabus or in the academic discussions or in the classroom? Have you really gone and dissect Gandhi on those lines, whether it is a righteous moral behavior or irrighteous moral behavior? You have to decide. I'm not going to decide, but it is you who have to decide. Then comes in the Constituent Assembly, Dr. Ambedkar proposes that Constitution was made by number of subcommittees. It's not just one particular thing, but it is made by number of subcommittees. And in the subcommittee of the franchisee, Sardar Patel was the chairman of that committee. Ambedkar was member of that committee. And Ambedkar proposed that franchisee should be fundamental right. Sardar Patel opposes, says, no, 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 let the Constituent Assembly decide. Ambedkar makes it very clear that unless until we propose, the Constituent Assembly will not decide. What is an implication? Now we consider as our first home minister as a great iron man and all those things, and who integrated India, blah, 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 all kind of integration narration comes. When any territory which is surrounded by your territory, it is so easy to take over. इसमें कोई rocket science नहीं है, you can also understand. Okay? Now, imagine he opposes it. Now, why I am saying so? Why I am narrating that so? I am narrating that so precisely because the kind of a problems you are facing today in the elections, if franchising becomes fundamental right, you can easily question the EVA, and you can say even to the lower court that I am not very sure that whether my fundamental right is being properly exercised and conducted or not, because I don't know whether the button I am pressing it is going to the right person or not. I have no idea. These are the legal solutions to the constitutional solutions to the existing problem. Do we think on those lines? We don't think on those lines. Then there is another bogey of stereotype, that of the national modern. I have failed to understand what is national modern. Let me tell you. And I'm certainly going to write a critique of all those things, but I'm just triggering all those ideas because these have become part and parcel of our stereotypes. And this stereotyping business comes from your normative, and your normative is so much governed by your prejudices. As long as we remain prejudices, we will not make our nation a healthy nation, a good nation, a livable nation, and a proud nation. A woman has to be respected. You have to have a criteria. Even after 70 years or so, whether we have been able to create access to sanitation, access to healthcare, access to education, and respect for women. Just imagine. This is a simple four criteria. How much we have achieved. Building a bullet train or a highway is so easy than breaking your stereotypes and cultural syndrome. So the cultural syndrome of protected ignorance, what I call it as a protected ignorance. I give you a fantastic example of protected ignorance. A professor of physics gets up in the morning and pours water to sun despite knowing the fact that water will never reach to sun. This is a fantastic example of protected ignorance. Another example, a satellite is launched in India and date is decided according to the Panchang. Another example of protected ignorance. Another example of stereotypes. Third example, Pakistan celebrates its Independence Day on 14th of August. India celebrates its Independence Day on 15th of August. But ऐसा क्या हुआ? Has historians or the analysts have really gone into checking those things, why it happened? Why there is this difference of 14th and 15th of August? Because the Panchang was seen and it was decided by those Panchangs that Nehru should become, and Nehru also agreed to be coronated as a prime minister of this country on 15th of August. And therefore 15th of August becomes our Independence Day. Have you really thought of? Are these not the stereotypes? So this national modern is another stereotype. Now just imagine who is what, whether he is really modern or not. The the socialism in India remains good as long as it gets cornered. The benefit of the socialism gets cornered by the caste Hindus, and more there is equity. The moment there is this equity in that socialism, then the socialism becomes bad in this country. So you see how we enter through these kind of stereotypes and analyze the phenomena. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening and thanks for giving me opportunity. And I will be glad to answer your questions if you have any. Thank you very much.
Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for giving us such an enriching lecture. We always so hooked onto your lecture and we found it really, really interesting. And we are looking forward to have more lectures from you.